And now I'm going to continue my video series on the healthcare, well, I call it the healthcare bill, but now it's the healthcare law, okay? And we're going to start on page number 77, and it says repayment. Now, do you remember in the last video where I was talking about how the government was going to give startup money to these community health insurance option plans to get them all started up? Well, that wasn't free money. They actually have to pay that back, and they have 9 years to do this. Let me read this to you. In general, a community health insurance option shall be required to repay the Secretary of the Treasury on such terms as the Secretary may require for any payments made under paragraph 1B by the date that is not later than 9 years after the date on which the payment is made. The Secretary may require the payment of interest with respect to such repayments at rates that do not exceed the market interest rate. Okay, so not only do they have to pay back the startup money, but they may actually have to pay interest on this startup money, and the interest will be determined based on the market rate at the time when the Secretary calculates the interest. Okay. Sanctions in case of for-profit conversion. Now, when these community health insurance options begin, they are not for profit. Any money that comes into the business will be put back into the business. The people that run it are just going to make a basic paycheck, and that's it. They're not going to really get rich off this thing. But let's say this community health insurance option decides at some point to change that and say, hey, we're going to start making money now. Well, the Secretary of Health and Human Services is going to step in on this. Sanctions in case of for-profit conversion. In any case in which the Secretary enters into a contract with a qualified entity for the offering of a community health insurance option, and such entity is determined to, be a for-profit entity by the Secretary, such entity shall be immediately liable to the Secretary for any payments received by such entity from the startup fund and permanently ineligible to offer a qualified health plan. So, what does that all mean? It means that if they decide to become a for-profit business, immediately the Secretary of Health and Human Services will collect all the startup money that he just gave to that community health insurance option, and furthermore, he will forbid them from ever offering health insurance ever again. Wow, what a penalty. State Advisory Council. First, we have to establish this. A state other than a state that elects to opt out as provided in subsection A3 shall establish or designate a public or non-profit private entity to serve as the State Advisory Council to provide recommendations to the Secretary on the operations and policies of a community health insurance option in the state. Alright, so what that means is they will create a state advisory council, okay? And this council will recommend things to the Secretary of Health and Human Services as to how the community health care option should actually operate. In other words, how the community health care option should bill their patients, how they should bill the hospitals, how they should bill the doctors, how they should collect the funds, how they should collect the premiums, so on and so forth. And all this will be done by the State Advisory Council. And this would be for every single state, okay, except for the ones that decide not to offer this community health insurance option. Such council shall provide recommendations on at least the following: policies and procedures to integrate quality improvement and cost containment mechanisms into the healthcare delivery system. In other words, they're going to come up with policies to say, okay, how do we save these patients money at the hospitals and the doctor's offices? Mechanisms to facilitate public awareness of the availability of a community health insurance option. In other words, they're going to they're going to come up with recommendations on how to get the people to be aware that there is a community health insurance option. Well, guess what? You've been watching my YouTube channel, and now you know that there is such a thing as a community health insurance option. The only thing you don't know is whether you're living in a state that offers such a thing. And if you know that your state is offering it, or you know that your state is not offering it, I want you to leave that information right down here below, so that everybody else will know too. And alternative payment structures under a community health insurance option for health care providers that encourages quality improvement and cost control. Okay, so the quality of the health insurance has to improve as time goes on, and the cost has to be maintained. You know, you can't have out of control costs inside a community health insurance option. The members of the State Advisory Council shall be representatives of the public and shall include healthcare consumers and providers. So in other words, people like you and I would be a part of the community health insurance option, and there would be various providers that somehow would be part of this as well. Applicability of recommendations. The Secretary may apply the recommendations of a State Advisory Council to a community health insurance option in that state, in any other state, or in all states. Okay. Well, that's enough for this particular video. I will go ahead and continue this in my next video, so I want you to stay tuned.